Hello and welcome to Financial Technology Frontiers. Once again, it is a time to focus on Africa. And this time around, we are talking about the Canada-Africa Fintech Summit, which is being hosted by the African Fintech Network. I'm talking to Dr. Segun Aina, who is the president of African Fintech Network. And to bring you a little bit of facts and figures about African fintech, they have grown to about 1,263 fintechs in Africa. And this market is heavily characterized by the deep technology penetration, which is slowly taking place all over Africa, where mobile money penetration has always been the highest. And there has been a lot of work that is happening in AI, in the area of payments, in the area of mobility, in the area of digital transformation. This Canada African Fintech Summit is going to be held in the month of August, and we will get into deeper details about this conversation with Dr. Segun Aina. So, join me in welcoming Dr. Segun Aina, the president of African Fintech Network.
Thank you very much, Babu. It's nice to be with you again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now we are going to speak something about the Big Bang, the Canada-Africa Fintech Summit, which you are really nurturing and bringing these two communities together to take it to the next level of growth for both Canada as well as for Africa, considering the fact that Canada is really focusing upon the African region for better trade and commerce. So, what are the things that have inspired you to create a platform to connect the African and Canadian fintech in Canada?
Yes, as you very well know, both Canada and all the 54 countries that make up Africa have been long-term partners in trade, in investment, and many other areas. And in recent years, with the advent of fintech, we have seen the impact that fintech has played throughout the world, but particularly in countries like Canada and, of course, the continent of Africa, with Canada leading the world in a number of ways in the technology area. It's a matured market, with Africa also having the enormous talents that countries like Canada need. They have the enormous entrepreneurial spirit that investors from Canada can look forward to as an alternative source of investment in technology rather than looking at the market that they are used to now, particularly the US market. So we have envisioned this to be able to connect these two dynamic markets together that has a long history of collaboration. And that is why we are making as the theme for the event Canada-Africa Fintech Convergence, nurturing talents, which is very important, fueling growth of both markets, and forging cross-border prosperity for sustainability. And talking about sustainability, the Canada-Africa Fintech Summit is not just an event, it's a movement that is planned to lead to so many things for the future, for the benefit of Canada, and also for the benefit and growth of Africa as a continent.
Superb, sir. When you are speaking about such a great collaboration that is happening about both these countries, okay, and this event is just at the beginning stage today, how do you envision the scale and impact of this summit in the years to come?
The future for me looks extremely bright for the fintech collaboration between Canada and Africa. And if you look at what has happened in recent years in Africa, for instance, that will give you an idea of what the possibilities are. In 2019, for instance, when Africa Fintech Network was established, Africa has no fintech that has assumed a unicorn status. The unicorn status in fintech is a company that is valued at $1 billion and over. Today, 6 years after, we have at least 8 unicorns coming out of Africa and offering their services all over the world, including in Canada. In 2019, there were just about 2 billion investment into fintech in Africa. Today, cumulatively, we have close to $40 billion investment in Africa. So you can see the growth trajectory that we have seen in Africa. And we have also seen in the Canada end the kind of development that we have in technology corridors. If you look at Ontario, for instance, corridors, that we have in various cities and areas, Waterloo, and so on and so on and so forth. So we see a meeting of minds that will ensure that this is translated into future prosperity for those countries, with Canada requiring talent. I mean, you know that Canada's immigration policy supports large number of inflow of people. Between 350,000 to 500,000 is expected to come into Canada every year. And we've seen that we look at the population of immigrants coming to Canada in the recent years. They are made up of largely, I mean, of course, India is number one, and then when you put Africa together, probably Africa comes second in terms of number of people. And the quality of people that come from Africa to Canada today are people that already have the skills and are contributing to the development of the economy. In that same vein, we see a lot of fintechs, people, entrepreneurs, working on payment systems, on banking technologies, migrating to Canada and supporting the growth that Canada needs to be able to continue to be, a superpower in the world. And when that happens, and we also make sure that Africa will also benefit, not just from the diaspora remittances that comes from the Africans that are here and send money home, but also for exchange of technology. And you'd be surprised that I was a banker for about 30 years in my life, and I've found out that even today, a lot of banking applications and banking practices in the technology area in Africa are far, far superior to what we have in Canada, even including to what we have in the US. So the matured market of Canada, North America in general, and even Europe can benefit a lot from the creativity that the challenges that we have in Africa has brought to bear. So we see this contributing to this.
Thank you very much for that initiative. Any idea how many Canadian companies are going to Africa and African companies are interested to come to Canada from the fintech side?
Yes, yes, a lot. In fact, a lot of provinces have on cities have programs, visa programs, startup visas, and so on that encourages, startups, fintech startups to come into Canada, and we have seen that happening the last few years, the last 5 to 10 years. We now have a lot of, have clusters of innovation hubs that we have a lot of Africans, operating there. And there are a lot of programs and products that are now operated in Canada that are facilitated by those young talents that have come from Africa to make Canada home. Ditto, we have seen a lot of Canadian companies invest in Africa, even though historically it's been mostly in the mining areas. But technology has a much more better potential to impact everybody in the system than money that are being defocused. So we hope that at the end of this summit, which will be just an opener because there will be so many other things that will follow, Canadian policymakers, government, and so will see the benefits of encouraging investment and partnership in the technology space, particularly in the fintech space for Africa, and create a lot of, the investment that have come into Africa have come mostly from the US. A lot of the fintech companies that are doing very well are actually incorporated in the US. So Canada is losing out. These are going to make Canada see the benefit and also ensure that they have a skin in the game.
So we are anyways trying to create these interactions between Canadian and African fintechs. What kind of key discussions and engagements can you think about in this event, which is going to be lucrative for these attendees to participate and expect them to join strongly in good numbers?
Thank you. That's a very good one because people attend all sorts of events. But this is an event that is going to be different. Different one in terms of the caliber of people that we are bringing in. We're not organizing an event for 20,000, 10,000 people. We are organizing it for select group of people, policy makers, government officials, fintech operators, financial services regulators, investors, and so on and so forth. So we're not expecting more than 400 to 500, persons attending, good quality people who can sit down in the room, network among themselves, agree on some things that can move us forward. And it's not just going to be, a talk show. There'll be a lot of things startup presentation, product pitches, and so on and so forth in the front of investors who may want to be able to invest in it. There'll be a lot of policy announcements. For instance, we know that there's already exists a Canada Global Africa strategy. We expect the ministers in government or some policymakers to come to that meeting. We invited them anyway to come and tell us the key aspects of that strategy and how it affects technology and fintech. African leaders, we have a vice president of one of the biggest countries in Africa, Nigeria, that have confirmed they will come in. There are many other countries that we're expecting confirmation from the leaders who can then come and talk about what they are doing. In the Africa Fintech Network, for instance, one of the key things we are doing, which we also want to extend to Canada, is the fintech licensing passporting, whereby there could be some arrangement where, because a lot of African fintech organizations are coming into Canada, how do we ensure that we reduce the bottlenecks involved in migrating their business from Africa to Canada? So by agreeing on some basic similarities in terms of the licensing requirements, so that if you are licensed to operate in a market in Africa and Africa has this arrangement with Canada, you have ticked a lot of the boxes that is required in Canada to be able to come in. We're also going to be talking about green finance, green tech, because so much is happening in the climate change area that also threatens the world, which technology can bring to bear. And because of the challenges in Africa, African talents have been able to come up with what they regard as local solutions to local challenges, but actually these challenges are global challenges where Canada can also benefit from, and it is the best interest of Canada actually to be looking at this, given the challenges that is happening now between Canada and its immediate neighbor. Africa should be the next frontier for investment, by Canadian business people. So these are the kind of things that we expect to see, and of course, it also the interesting thing is that this event is coming up a day or so after very popular Caribana event, which brings in millions of Black people from all over the world into Toronto. So people that come for this event also have the opportunity of witnessing that event. And we're also collaborating with some other partners to also have some events within these events that could benefit them. So it's a cocktail of so many things happening, and everybody will have something to benefit from attending the Canada-Africa Fintech Summit.
Superb. Now, from the policymakers and regulators' perspective, what are the kind of policies or regulations that you think would be fostered here, or what kind of MOUs can be created at this event?
We believe that there are a lot of commonalities between Canada and Africa. Of course, there are a lot of differences. How do we close this gap and ensure that those bottlenecks that we see are taken care of? So we hope to have a lot of understanding of the mindset of regulators and policymakers in Canada, and for policymakers and regulators in Canada to also know the expectations of businesses, fintech businesses that are doing very well in Africa, and even those young people who just have big business ideas but need to be able to demonstrate this in a much more improved environment like Canada, or looking for partners in Canada. So we see a lot of regulatory positive impact that will come into this because of knowledge, because everything is based on knowledge. If both parties, talking about Canada as a country and Africa as a continent, if both parties see, and recently with the African Union, they were here in Canada, and a lot of things have been put together. So this is definitely going to advance that dialogue in a way that similar MOUs at levels below the policymakers can come into place between operators in both countries. So we are in the discussion stages now, and we are hopeful that a lot of agreements, a lot of memorandum of understanding, and a lot of new business deals will be announced in those events. One or two is going to be big, but I'm not going to release it now. But it's very close to the event. Some of the expectation in terms of the MOUs and the policy statements that we hope to make during this event in August. Thank you.
Great. What kind of outcomes do you aim for this event? And what is the next step now beyond this Canada Fintech Summit?
We are in this for the long run. And a journey of 1,000 miles, as it says, starts with one step. This is just one step towards our goal. And what we envision is we will eventually have a Canada-Africa Fintech movement of some sort that will incorporate everybody within the fintech ecosystem in Canada and Africa for continued dialogue outside of conference rooms. And we see that having great impact on the economy of Canada and great impact on the economies of the various countries in Africa. So it's not just an event that we hold for 2-3 days and go away. Yes, we'll go away, but action will continue. We will agree on action steps. We'll set up different working groups that will work on some of those things so that by the time we are having another event in another year, we'll be able to start by saying, what did we agree to do last year? How far have we gone about that? And at the end of that, then agree again for another year so that we can see sustainability. We can monitor progress. We can measure the impact that this has done. And if you look at the progress that Africa in particular has made in the last, say, 7 to 8 years in the technology space in particular, the kind of impact it has had on the GDP of these countries, we will see that we stand to benefit both in the short term and the long run. Canada and Africa using their strengths, the different strengths that they have, to be able to come up with fintech, payment system, and banking solutions that improves the environment and that benefits the society at large.
Superb, sir. We look forward to a great level of interesting collaboration between both these countries, which will come together, or both these uh, groups of people who would come together and foster greater relationships between both Canada and Africa. And you would be the most important pillar which would set this as a movement for the entire African folks to get into the North American market and thrive in the North American market. Wish you all the best for this and look forward to a lot more interesting such sessions with you in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Babu.